the Metropolitan Police Constable who simply can't behave themselves in a civilised society. PC Mathew Cooper of the Metropolitan Police's Central West Command Unit pleaded guilty last week to one count of controlling and coercive behaviour without violence, whilst a second charge of controlling and coercive behaviour with violence will be left to lie on file. Now, in English law applicable to England and Wales, a criminal charge is allowed to lie on file when the presiding judge agrees that there is enough evidence for a case to be made, but that it's not in the public's interest for prosecution to proceed, usually because the defendant has acknowledged other or more serious charges. But here we have a guilty plea to a lesser charge of the behaviour without violence, and the more serious one is the one that gets to be put on the back burner. Very peculiar. Cooper, who was in training at the time of the offences, was first arrested at his home on December the 9th, 2020. So he hadn't even made it to be full plod by the time the indoctrination and culture wormed its way into his brain. Although he had been taught by that point how to deal with an arrest, as he answered no comment to all questions put to him. It said that he was placed on restricted duties until he was charged by a postal requisition. Detective Chief Superintendent Owen Richards, who is in charge of policing for the Central West area, said, "I commend the strength and courage the victim showed in reporting this officer's behaviour and in supporting the investigation, even though we fucked you over by only getting him sentenced for the lesser offence. I would urge anyone who is the victim of domestic abuse, whether physical or psychological, to report their experiences to the police. We have specially trained officers who will take their concerns seriously and support them throughout the judicial process. And so serious they take the reports against their own that they manage to get them the lesser sentencing whilst popping the more serious one on a shelf in the hope it gets forgotten about." DCS Richards added, "PC Cooper was off duty when these offences happened, but that does not change the seriousness of his actions. Being as a Met officer is a privilege, and we expect our officers to behave at the highest standards in their professional and private lives. When an officer fails to meet those standards, they can expect to be investigated and face the consequences of their actions, as has happened in this case." Well, if these are the consequences, no wonder people with narcissistic personality disorders are queuing up to join. Cooper is to be sentenced for his behaviour less the violence on the 31st of August at Snaresbrook Crown Court, and will also face a misconduct hearing. But how to put a charge to lay on file that is more serious than the charge they're doing him for just goes completely against the meaning of laying on file. It's fucked up.